In 2025, the numbers tell a clear story. Only about 1 in 5 employees feels genuinely engaged at work, and nearly half report experiencing significant daily stress. That means most of the workforce begins each day with a sense of distraction or fatigue already hanging over them. This isn't just an issue of long hours. Researchers at UC Irvine have shown that office workers are interrupted roughly every 3 minutes, and once disrupted, it can take nearly 23 minutes to find full focus again. When you overlay vague goals on top of this constant fragmentation, the result is overwhelm that compounds minute by minute. At first glance, people assume the overload comes entirely from too many tasks or hyper-connected technology. Notifications ping all day long, emails never stop, responsibilities pile up across countless apps. Those things clearly matter, but they are only part of the picture. What really multiplies stress is the way the mind reacts when instructions are unclear. A hazy task saps more cognitive energy than an actual heavy workload, because uncertainty demands extra interpretation at every glance. Imagine writing "Finish project" at the top of your planner. Each time you see it, your chest tightens slightly. You hesitate. Which part of the project? Do you need help from a teammate? Is it due this week or next month? Nothing in that phrase gives you traction. Instead of moving forward, you cycle through questions. A task that looked simple now feels paralyzing because your brain turned one vague phrase into a dozen unknowns. The hesitation spreads. Soon, minutes become hours lost not in the work itself, but in decoding what the work even is. This is how overwhelm grows so quickly. Clear tasks feed momentum. Vague tasks stall it immediately. The human brain evolved to close loops, identifiable, specific problems that can be solved and set aside. When a task is open-ended, the loop never closes. Every glance at it re-triggers the pressure. The stress is not about the actual hours demanded, but about the energy drained by indecision. This is why people arrive at the end of a busy day feeling depleted, without being able to name what they truly accomplished. We often expect that a new app or productivity tool will fix this problem. A sleek digital calendar, a task manager powered by AI, new reminders that sync across devices, these feel like order. But moving "Finish project" from paper to an app doesn't change its vagueness. You just dressed up the same uncertainty in cleaner design. The mind still stalls when it gets there, because no tool can replace the need for clarity in the task itself. This mental friction consumes enormous time. A 2023 survey found that American workers lose an average of 6.5 hours each week to distractions, adding up to 13 working days every year. And that's just external chatter. Coworkers walking by, household chores for those at home, even pets tapping for attention. Add vague goals on top of that baseline and the cost doubles, because your brain is distracted not only from outside, but from inside as well. What actually exhausts people is less about raw task load than the repeated collision with fuzzy thoughts. Each time you stare at an undefined instruction, your stress spikes slightly, and over the day these spikes pile up into fatigue. Contrast that with the clarity of something like, at 10 o'clock, draft page 1 of the report. Suddenly, there's no hesitation. 10 arrives, the page gets written. The loop closes cleanly. That single shift eliminates the extra guesswork that drains energy. This draining effect reveals why so many professionals believe they need longer hours or stronger willpower. In reality, hours vanish in those small spaces of indecision. When you multiply dozens of unclear instructions across an entire week, you can easily lose entire days. On the other hand, converting each vague intention into a simple instruction reclaims time that seemed unavailable. The workload itself hasn't shrunk, but the wasted cycles of hesitation disappear. Some might argue jobs are simply heavier today than ever before. More meetings, more admin work, emails and data requests crossing time zones all night. That's real. Yet surveys from 2025 show that knowledge workers spend nearly 5 hours a week just on low-value administrative updates, with many reporting even more. It's not just the presence of tasks, but the way those tasks come unstructured, undefined, and endless. Without clarity, each little demand balloons into something that threatens to block the entire day. The paradox of mental overload is that people respond by adding things. More apps, more notes, more hacks. Yet what reduces stress is subtraction, the subtraction of vagueness. A task reframed into a clear step frees the brain to act. Instead of forcing energy into interpreting what finished project means, you save that energy for the act of writing, coding, or replying. The difference feels immediate because what weighed you down was never the task itself, but the way your brain struggled to outline it. Neuroscientists often describe the brain's preference for simple loops. A defined next step is a loop with a beginning and an end. Carrying out the step closes it, producing a sense of completion that feeds motivation. But a vague intention is a loop that never closes. It reopens every time you're reminded of it, dragging stress with it each time. Multiply this across 10, 20, or 50 such half-defined intentions, and you end up with the very thing surveys measure. Workers who are busy all day, yet depleted by night, unsure of what was actually achieved. When you reframe tasks into precise instructions, loops close cleanly. The stress signals stop repeating, and the freed energy makes it possible to sustain focus through the day. The shift doesn't require exotic tools. It requires the discipline to capture goals in clear form, to define a next action in unambiguous language. Once the pattern becomes consistent, mental space that was lost to indecision starts coming back. That is when productivity begins to feel less like strain and more like flow. This helps explain why engagement levels remain so low even as tools and technology grow more advanced. Without clarity of thought, all the dashboards in the world cannot prevent stress from spreading. Workers believe time is the scarce resource. What they often lack isn't time, it's definition. When hours are spent circling vague loops, stress compounds. When those loops are closed by clarity, both time and energy expand. And it's not only modern workers who prove this point. History shows the same lesson in different clothing. Leaders in far messier times had to govern without apps, dashboards, or constant notifications, yet they found ways to maintain calm focus. The difference was not in the tools at hand, but in the clarity of the thinking they carried. And that brings us to an unlikely teacher whose notes survived from 2,000 years ago, offering a method surprisingly practical for overloaded minds today. Marcus Aurelius's not-so-boring secret. When you hear the name Marcus Aurelius, the image that comes to mind is often a stern emperor writing heavy philosophy in marble halls. But his way of thinking was not about poetry or abstract speculation. It was a method for survival. He ran an empire stretched thin by wars, politics, and even plague. In that environment, vague decisions could cost lives. To manage it, he reduced complexity into plain notes, short, strict reminders to guide his own behavior. That's the real secret. Marcus wasn't writing for an audience or for history, he was writing for himself. And those notes worked like mental engineering, turning intense uncertainty into clear, usable instructions. His writing was not dressed up in rhetoric. It looked more like blunt self-commands. Imagine someone under pressure jotting down a line just to stay anchored. If anger rises, then remember patience. If fear appears, then act calmly. These were not performances for others to admire. They were private frameworks for action. He didn't produce eloquent scrolls, he produced working notes that told him what to do when emotion or distraction threatened. That's why they survived. They show a leader practicing discipline of thought with the simplest possible tools: a pen, paper, and immediate instructions. Modern professionals have access to information streams far beyond anything Marcus could imagine. Graphs update in real time, dashboards display every metric, countless reminders pop on screen. And yet, people today often report feeling more scattered and more drained. The gap is striking. Marcus faced troops at the frontier, unpredictable politics, and outbreaks of disease, stressors heavier in scale but clearer in structure. Leaders now face overloaded inboxes and non-stop notifications, which should be trivial in comparison, yet seem just as paralyzing. The difference lies not in the objective weight of responsibilities, but in the approach to clarity. We chase speed, he chased definition. This is why his notes feel so practical today. He used them to strip a situation down to its root before trying to act. Instead of rushing, he clarified cause and effect. If circumstance X occurs, then my action is Y. That formula gave him traction on chaos. And this is where his habit connects directly to a tool you can use. Psychologists today call these short statements implementation intentions, clear if-then rules that make follow-through far easier. Marcus didn't use that phrase, but the habit is identical. He wrote condition-to-action lines not because it was elegant, but because it worked. And you can copy that. The value doesn't come just from the words, it comes from the simplicity. Once you phrase a stressor as a concrete, if this, then that, your brain no longer burns energy in interpretation. The loop closes. That was his method of resilience. In place of abstract worries, he created cues that linked directly to behavior. When anger surged, he had a line prepared. When fear arrived, he had a counter ready. The pattern reaffirmed itself day after day. Thoughts shrunk into rules, rules guided action, action built confidence. He engineered steadiness through clarity. A comparison with today highlights the gap. Imagine Marcus in a modern office, Slack alerts flooding his laptop. Most people drown in the stream of reactions and threads. He would look at the distractions, grab a notebook, and rewrite the situation into a single line. If a message does not require principle, ignore. If it does require principle, act immediately. That sentence would filter an avalanche into clarity. We, with all our apps and organizational tools, often dodge that step. We leave intentions vague and spin in circles. He had fewer tools but a stronger habit, and that habit mattered more. The temptation is to explain away his stability by saying Rome was different. And certainly, in physical terms, his world was more brutal, which makes his approach more remarkable. The reality is that the habit of writing clear instructions helped him reduce even life-or-death events into manageable pieces. That habit was not philosophy in an abstract sense, it was strategy for functioning. He didn't frame his meditations as lofty theory. He framed them as a soldier's checklists for mental survival. That's why they sound almost plain compared to later philosophers, because they were designed for action, not debate. Now look at the overlap with daily modern stress. Your stakes may not involve wars and plagues, but the sensation of fog feels familiar. The boss gives an assignment like improve team performance without clear metrics. The effect is hesitation. What does that mean? How do you measure it? Where do you even start? Marcus never left instructions in that form. If someone gave him a broad demand, he would translate it into a rule. If performance is weak, then schedule training. If morale drops, then meet with commanders. Notice the difference. Movement becomes possible when phrased with clarity. Modern professionals can do the same translation today. This is the deeper point. Overwhelm is rarely about the workload itself and almost always about vagueness. Once you cut through the fog with a direct instruction, even complex goals become actionable. That is the same loop Marcus practiced: clarify, act, repeat. And today, research confirms it works. Studies on implementation intentions show that simple if-then plans double the likelihood of follow-through. They turn intentions into cues. Marcus found the same rule centuries earlier by trial and necessity. He wrote down instructions and followed them. From the outside, it looks almost boring. In practice, it was liberating. Consider how this shrinks fear. A vague threat feels massive because it is undefined. But when you capture it in a line like, if crisis appears, then focus on this first step, fear subsides. Marcus returned to this technique constantly. Break problems into steps, phrase each as a condition and response, and execute the response. For him, clarity was the weapon that defeated paralysis. And the same effect shows up in today's workplace. Big demands like streamline operations paralyze until reframed into, if it's Monday morning, then audit this single process. Suddenly progress starts, and progress itself generates calm. Some dismiss philosophy as irrelevant to practical stress. But for Marcus, philosophy was nothing abstract. He did not write to impress future readers or to win acclaim. His notes weren't public works, they were engineering for the mind. That's why they feel sharp even now. They reduce complicated leadership dilemmas into direct responses that anyone could adapt. And that's also why they endure. They are grounded not in Roman culture, but in universal clarity. Strip away the time period, and what remains is practical mental practice. It might even frustrate some to see how effective such a simple method could be. Workers today chase apps, hacks, and tools when the Emperor of Rome managed chaos with short condition action lines in a notebook. But that contrast is the entire insight. Clarity beats complexity. It did then, and it does now. If you carry away one lesson from Marcus, it is this: stop interpreting, stop guessing, stop living inside vagueness. Write the rule, make the link, anchor the action. That converts stressor into step, and step into progress. And here is where the practical bridge forms. His secret wasn't mystical thought or perfect calm. It was very small formulas, If X happens, then I do Y. That method, known now as the if-then rule, scales as easily to daily nutrition choices as it did to matters of empire. By using it, Marcus steadied his throne. By using it, you can steady your workload. Clear thought shrinks vague goals into movements you can actually start. Overwhelm doesn't vanish by wishing it away. It vanishes by framing what to do next. Which brings us to the modern application. Think about the types of goals that appear on your own list. Eat better. Work out more. Be productive. They sit there as broad wishes, frustrating you. You tell yourself they're simple, but when the time comes, you hesitate. Why? Because without clarity, the brain has no direct trigger to act. That hesitation is the modern version of chaos. And the tool Marcus used is the same one you can now adapt, converting a vague stress list into clear rules that actually move you forward. Turning stress lists into action plans. Why does a task like eat better seem so simple on paper yet impossible to act on? The words sound positive, even motivating, but the moment you see them on a list, momentum stops. The problem sits in their construction. Eat better tells you nothing about what, when, or how. It leaves the actual decision-making incomplete, like a jigsaw with missing pieces. That open gap between intention and instruction creates friction, and every time you stare at the unfinished puzzle, hesitation grows. Unclear goals aren't harmless placeholders. They create recurring friction every time you revisit them. Each encounter with Eat Better restarts the same guessing cycle. Should you cook, order differently, snack less, or rearrange portions? None of these choices are clear in advance, so the decision process repeats again and again. Contrast that with, if it's noon, then I'll eat a protein-rich lunch. The statement already decides for you. Noon signals the behavior, and no inner debate is required. The loop is closed. Psychology research shows if-then planning automates decisions and reduces reliance on in-the-moment willpower. The task translates from an indefinite hope into a defined action. That difference explains why vague tasks often stall progress and why consistent clarity restores momentum. Without definition, the brain burns energy trying to translate a blurry goal into specifics on the fly. With if-then framing, those choices are front-loaded. Execution feels automatic because the question of what to do was already settled earlier. Motivation stops leaking into constant deliberation and instead channels directly into action. Take something broad like reply to emails. Even with good intentions, it stirs resistance. There are too many options. Which emails? Which order? How long should you spend? Reframe it as, if it's 9 a.m., then I'll reply to the 3 latest client emails. Boundaries emerge. You know when to start, which messages to address, and how to finish. 9 o'clock arrives, your brain follows the instruction, and closure happens. No extra negotiation. Sometimes people assume this approach is restrictive, like boxing in their freedom. In practice, it's the opposite. Without clear instructions, the brain reopens each decision dozens of times a day. That micro-scale hesitation drains time and confidence. Each delay fuels the suspicion that you lack discipline or drive. When if-then rules serve as the guide, the pattern reverses. Small wins reinforce your confidence quietly, and the brain begins to expect follow-through as a normal rhythm. Instead of debating with yourself all day, you're completing loops and collecting momentum. Think about exercise more. That phrase towers over you like a vague promise. The brain delays because the path isn't fixed. Is it running today, yoga, lifting, or walking? By evening, you've already spent energy negotiating possibilities. Now reframe. If it's Tuesday at 6 p.m., then I'll do a 20-minute bodyweight circuit. Time, place, and action condense into one line. The moment Tuesday evening appears, there's no question of what's required. Progress isn't imagined anymore, it's scheduled. This works because vagueness compounds stress. A dozen hazy tasks operate like open loops demanding constant attention. Each glance triggers small bursts of uncertainty. That's why lists filled with aspirations feel heavier than they look. Replace them with if-then statements, and those same tasks form a sequence of executable steps. The list feels lighter without shrinking, because vagueness, not the number of tasks, was the true weight. And the central mistake is that most people never attempt this translation step. They write vaguely, assume it's enough, then blame themselves later when nothing moves. They call it lack of focus, laziness, or procrastination, when the real cause was absence of clarity. Imagine driving a route with a GPS that only says, go north. Every turn would be a pause, guessing whether that's still correct. But if the GPS gave precise turns, motion would remain continuous. If-then rules create that same effect for your daily work. Consider procrastination more closely. People imagine they're avoiding hard work, but often they're avoiding the fog. Walking into a task with no specific start feels disorienting. The mind resists not because effort is unbearable, but because confusion threatens wasted effort. Create a condition action link, and the fog lifts. The act that once felt like avoidance now feels mechanical. The trigger occurs, the routine runs. Procrastination fades because there is no longer a problem to solve at entry. It's already been solved. Take clean the house as another test. Standing in front of it, the meaning could stretch across dozens of chores. Vacuuming, dishes, laundry, maybe closets and shelves. The ambiguity grows louder the more you consider it. Recast it into, if it's Saturday morning, then I'll vacuum the living room and wash the dishes. Suddenly, a mountain collapses into 2 steps. Once they're finished, the loop is closed with satisfying finality. You can always add another rule for the next phase, but crucially, each micro-win has been defined and completed. Even distractions yield more easily to this clarity framing. Work on presentation tempts drifting. You might open slides, then lose half an hour choosing colors. If reframed as, if it's 2 p.m., then I'll draft 3 bullet points for the opening slide, the temptation narrows. The action is so specific that detours seem noisy by comparison. Focus becomes viable because the path doesn't branch. Completion happens fast, rewarding focus and reducing future temptation. Behind all these examples lies the way the brain routes instructions. A clear instruction runs along action pathways, trigger and response, almost automatic. A vague intention veers into deliberation pathways, ongoing loops of questioning. This explains why if-then planning works so consistently. It reprograms daily triggers into defined responses, avoiding the mental toll of repeated deliberation. Pilots rely on checklists not to reduce skill, but to remove costly hesitation. If-then thinking does the same for daily routines, preventing mental drift. What matters most is starting small. You don't need to rebuild your life overnight. Begin with one vague entry that annoys you, maybe eat better or get organized. Ask what moment triggers it and what specific action defines progress. Write that down as an if-then. The act itself demonstrates the method. Almost instantly, the vague stress shrinks to a manageable step. As the practice repeats, you'll see how natural it becomes. Soon, your tasks no longer look like unresolved puzzles, but like sequences of clear moves stacked together. And here's a quick challenge. Pick one thing off your current list that feels foggy. Rewrite it as an if-then statement right now. Something as small as, if it's noon, then I'll eat a protein lunch. Take a moment, write yours in the comments. It locks the idea in your mind, and you may find it useful to see how others frame theirs. Even one translated task proves clarity to yourself. The impact accumulates quickly. Every completed step builds a small sense of closure. Closure reinforces confidence, and confidence builds willingness to move on the next clear step. Momentum grows not from dramatic breakthroughs, but from steady progress along clear paths. Workloads rarely shrink, yet overwhelm decreases because the fog dissolves. What burdened you wasn't the amount of work, but the blur of unclear intentions. With practice, the habit of translating them lowers that blur until your lists are less about stress and more about steady, navigable action. And that raises an important question. If setting clear rules for tasks helps so much, why do so many people return to vague intentions in the first place? Sometimes it's habit. Sometimes it's the belief that writing more detail is wasted time compared to working harder. Yet history and research alike suggest the opposite. Success comes from structured clarity, not endless effort. Which naturally opens another question. How do you make space to refine your thinking regularly enough that tasks don't collapse back into vagueness? That shift starts with a practice many overlook, deliberately pausing to reflect. Reflection,